I want to start by saying this isn't the America we were promised. This isn't the dream so many of us were told to believe in. When you wake up and see headlines screaming that a former president, Barack Obama, is somehow involved in a shocking arrest, your heart doesn't know whether to break, to brace, or to ask, is this even real? Now, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing on the south lawn of the White House years ago, watching the first black president walk with dignity, grace, and a profound sense of purpose. I remember that day. I was there. Millions of us wept, not out of fear, not out of rage, but out of hope. The kind of hope that only comes when history meets possibility. So to hear now that the same man is being dragged into a whirlwind of political arrests, accusations, and what some are calling a vendetta, it stops you cold. Now let me be clear, this is not about whether you voted for Obama or Trump or anybody in between. This is about truth. This is about the soul of this nation and who we allow to steer its moral compass. They say Tulsi Gabbard, the former congresswoman, stood before cameras, solemn-faced, and unveiled charges, as if pulling back the curtain on a painful chapter we didn't even know we were in. She didn't yell, she didn't grandstand, she simply read. Charges, she claimed, tied to classified misuse, global secrets, covert operations, and cover-ups going back to the Obama years. People gasped, and some cheered. And that, my friends, is where the pain deepens. Because when we get to a place where we're celebrating the downfall of our fellow Americans, when we clap at handcuffs and call it justice before the facts are even weighed, that's not patriotism, that's poison. I've spoken to people on both sides of this political earthquake, people in tears who feel betrayed, people convinced this is justice delayed finally being served, people scared that democracy is unraveling before their very eyes. And I ask each of them the same question: what is your heart telling you? Because I don't care how many lawyers, pundits, or prosecutors you bring to the table. If your heart isn't rooted in compassion, in fairness, in the pursuit of truth, not revenge, then you're not seeking justice, you're seeking power. And we've seen what that does to countries. We've seen what that does to families. We've seen what that does to souls. Donald Trump, whether you believe he's the hero in this story or the villain, he's certainly the center of it. Word is he authorized a full investigation, and insiders now suggest it's his fingerprints all over this arrest order. If that's true, we must ask, is this accountability or is this retribution? And I'll tell you, it is a dangerous path when presidents start jailing former presidents. That's not democracy. That's something else, something darker, something colder. But maybe the scariest part, how divided we've become. Because when half the country is screaming finally and the other half is saying fascism, we are not hearing each other anymore. We are not seeing the child behind every man, the mother behind every decision, the human behind every headline. And yet, as always, in our most uncertain moments, truth finds a way. Whether these charges against Obama stand or collapse under scrutiny, one thing is clear: America is standing at a moral crossroads. We must decide what kind of nation we want to be. Do we want to be a nation ruled by fear and vengeance, or do we want to be a nation that honors law, yes, but also mercy, dialogue, and grace? Let me tell you what I believe. This is not the end of Barack Obama's story. It is a chapter one that history will read with eyes wide open, and in the end, the facts will speak, the truth will rise, because it always does. It may take time, it may take courage, but it will rise. So to the families out there scared of what this means for the country, your children will inherit. Breathe. To the citizens on both sides of the aisle, crying foul or crying victory, listen. And to the soul of America itself, do not lose your way. There are moments in history that come like a thunderclap, sudden, loud, shocking, and when they do, you don't just hear them, you feel them deep in your bones. And for millions of Americans, that thunderclap came when they heard the news. Barack Obama, the 44th president of the United States, the man who once stood on the steps of the Capitol and said, "Yes, we can," is now allegedly at the center of an arrest warrant issued under the direction of Donald Trump. And whether the news is fact, fiction, or something floating uneasily in between, one thing is certain: it has rocked the soul of a nation. You see, for so many people, Barack Obama wasn't just a man, he was a movement. He was the symbol of something this country long promised but rarely delivered: possibility, representation, dignity wrapped in hope. I remember standing there in Chicago on that cold November night back in 2008, watching him walk on stage with Michelle and their daughters by his side. It was history written in real time. People cried, not just because he won, but because what he represented had won. That's not something you forget. That's something you carry with you, like a piece of sunlight in your pocket. So when whispers begin to swirl, when headlines shout that Barack Obama is being named in an investigation, possibly arrested, maybe even facing charges, it doesn't feel like news. It feels like betrayal. It feels like heartbreak in high definition. And it forces us to ask the question no one wants to speak aloud: can a symbol fall and still be sacred? Because whether or not the allegations are true, whether there was actual misuse of power, or whether this is a political stunt designed to score points in a divided country, the damage is already done, not just to the man, but to what he stood for. Because once people believe that the very embodiment of progress has been corrupted, a kind of despair creeps in. A soft, aching kind of despair that tells young people, see, nothing is real, even your heroes are hollow. But we must be careful. We must remember that history is not a simple thing. It is layered, it is messy, it is filled with contradictions. We must remember that a man can be both a beacon and a man, that he can rise and stumble and still be someone who changed the world. And more than that, we must remember that truth is not determined by who shouts the loudest, but by what stands the test of time. Right now, there are people who are cheering, who are convinced that this arrest is long overdue, that justice is finally being served. And to them I say, let us not confuse justice with vengeance. Because when we celebrate someone's downfall before we even understand the facts, we're not upholding truth. We're drinking poison and calling it patriotism. And then there are those who are mourning, who see this as an attack, who believe this is political theater scripted by those who've always feared what Obama symbolized. To them I say, stay grounded in truth, not fear. Ask the hard questions, seek the full story. Do not defend blindly, and do not abandon easily. Because justice is not found in blind loyalty, it is found in the courage to look at the whole picture, even when it hurts. But in the midst of this storm, there is something else that must be said, something tender, something human. No matter what side of the aisle you stand on, no matter how you feel about Barack Obama or Donald Trump, this moment has revealed something raw about us. We are hurting, we are fractured, we are desperate for answers, but also desperate for something steady. And maybe that's why this story hits so hard. Because it reminds us that we've placed too much of our hope in people and not enough in principles. Barack Obama, the symbol may be in question, but the question we should be asking is not just about him, it's about us. Who are we becoming as a nation that now watches former presidents accused, possibly arrested, with headlines flying faster than the truth can catch up? What do we lose when we let our symbols fall without giving space for the full truth to be revealed? And most importantly, can we still hold space for grace, even when we feel betrayed? When Tulsi Gabbard stepped into the frame of this unfolding drama, it wasn't with the fire and fury we've come to expect from political figures making explosive revelations. No, Tulsi didn't arrive to shout. She arrived to unravel. She stood there behind that podium, not as a Democrat, not as a former presidential candidate, but as a woman holding something heavy. The kind of weight that comes not just from knowing something controversial, but from choosing to speak it into the world. The press conference was hushed. No background music, no spectacle. Just her voice, clear, measured, resolute. And as she began to lay out what she claimed were declassified records, long-buried communications, and evidence of what she called executive misconduct, the air changed. You could feel it, the kind of stillness that happens right before a storm hits. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't gloating, she didn't need to, because the content of her words were enough to split the ground beneath our feet. According to Tulsi, the alleged infractions tied back to decisions made in the Obama-era White House, decisions that, in her words, may have circumvented national protocols, endangered global stability, and violated the sacred trust between leadership and the American people. That's the kind of statement that doesn't just make headlines, it reopens wounds. And depending on who you are, you heard those words either as a call to justice or a dagger into history. Some people immediately applauded her. Finally, someone is brave enough to speak, they said. She's standing up to the elites, to the machine, to the cover-ups we've always suspected. They didn't care if she had all the evidence yet. They just needed someone to confirm their long-held doubts. But others looked at Tulsi and saw betrayal. They said, how dare she? How dare she try to tear down the legacy of a man who inspired millions? Where's her loyalty? Her conscience? But here's the thing I want everyone to hear, especially in moments like this when tempers flare and sides form like armies on a battlefield. Courage doesn't always look like what we expect. Sometimes courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's that trembling voice, choosing to say the thing nobody wants to hear, not to destroy, but to demand clarity. And that's what Tulsi did. Now, I'm not here to confirm whether what she shared was factually indisputable or legally airtight. That's not my role, and frankly, that's what our courts are supposed to determine. But what I do know, what I feel, is that Tulsi Gabbard did not speak from a place of political gain. She has never walked the easy path. She's been disowned by her party. She's been vilified by both the left and the right. And still she speaks.
And when someone keeps speaking even when it costs them everything, you pay attention. What makes her actions so significant is not just the content of what she revealed, but the context. In a nation where information is twisted before it even hits the airwaves, where political loyalty often takes precedence over principle, Tulsi stepped out and risked not only her career, but her safety, her reputation, and her peace of mind. And no matter how you feel about her, that's not a small thing. But it also forces us to ask a bigger question. If what she's saying holds weight, if these revelations are real, then why did it take so long? Why were they hidden? Who else knew? And if they're not true, then what kind of political climate have we created where someone feels compelled to throw such accusations into the public sphere in the first place? Either way, it's a tragedy. Either way, it's a symptom of a system in deep pain. Tulsi's decision to unveil these charges isn't just about Barack Obama. It's about the fragility of transparency in modern governance. It's about a country desperately trying to make sense of the narratives being thrown at it from every angle. And it's about a woman standing in the eye of a political hurricane, saying, "I will not be silent." Maybe you see her as a whistleblower. Maybe you see her as a traitor. Maybe you don't know what to think. But I'll tell you what I see. I see a nation at a crossroads, and Tulsi, for better or worse, has forced us to look down both paths and ask, what do we really believe about truth, and are we brave enough to follow it even when it leads us somewhere we never wanted to go?
And that, right there, is where the deepest cut comes. Not just in what was said, but in who gains power from the saying of it. Because as Tulsi's revelations echoed across the airwaves, another name emerged like a shadow behind the spotlight: Donald J. Trump. Yes, the same man who once claimed the 2020 election was stolen, the same man who called Barack Obama a threat to American values, is now being whispered as the architect behind this sudden call for justice, or as some fear, this orchestrated attempt at revenge. Let me pause here and ask you a question that may sting. What happens to justice when power decides it wants to wear its clothes? Because what's unfolding now isn't just a court case or a political press conference. It's a storm gathering at the heart of democracy. According to multiple reports, Trump, now seeking redemption and re-election, has been quietly pushing for investigations into what he claims were deep state crimes carried out during the Obama administration. And Tulsi's announcement, it didn't appear out of thin air. Insiders now suggest that Trump and his circle may have had a hand in encouraging the exposure, if not in directly authorizing the steps that led us here. Now, I want to be fair. Some people believe this is long overdue. They say, good, no one should be above the law. Obama's presidency had scandals, secrets, and moments that need to be looked at under a microscope. They see Trump not as a revenge seeker, but as someone finally breaking through the elite wall of silence. But then there are those who see something much more dangerous. A man who once stood at a rally shouting, "Lock her up," now using the same tactic on another former leader. They see a man who believes justice is a tool not of truth, but of personal power. And I ask you, what happens when justice is no longer blind, but blinking in the direction of whoever screams loudest? We cannot ignore the weight of history. Around the world, we've seen what happens when leaders begin jailing former leaders. That is not democracy, that is dictatorship wrapped in legal paper. It's not truth, it's trauma disguised as order. And right now, this country is standing on the very edge of that cliff. And yet, some would argue that if the Obama administration did commit wrongdoing, if national security was compromised, if systems were manipulated, then truth doesn't care about optics. They say even if it's Trump leading the charge, does that mean we should ignore what's been uncovered? And that, my friends, is the tension pulling at America's soul. Because in a system where every truth is filtered through political rivalry, how do we ever trust the story again? This is the part that breaks my heart the most. Because when justice becomes tangled with politics, we all lose. The average American sitting at home doesn't know what to believe anymore. They see a president accusing another president, a congresswoman reading sealed files, and a media spinning it all like a circus on fire. And they feel helpless, tired, angry. Because what they really want is not scandal, they want clarity. They want to know who is telling the truth. And maybe more than that, they want to know if the truth even matters anymore. Donald Trump knows how to capture the spotlight. He knows how to use chaos like a conductor uses a baton, directing public emotion, channeling outrage, manufacturing loyalty. But when that power turns toward vengeance, when the machinery of justice begins to mirror personal grudges, we must stop and ask, are we holding people accountable, or are we allowing one man's mission to destroy his rivals, reshape our entire legal system? Because if Trump has truly positioned himself as the catalyst behind this case, then this is not just about Obama, it's about how fragile our institutions have become, and how easily they can be bent when truth is replaced by ambition. Tulsi may have spoken the words, but Trump may have written the script, and so we arrive at this painful intersection where truth, justice, and power are no longer walking in the same direction, where one man's political future seems to hinge on another's public downfall, and where the American people must now ask themselves, are we participants in justice, or are we spectators in a revenge opera that threatens to burn the whole stage down? And that's where the real heartbreak begins, not in the courtroom, not on the news, not in the halls of Congress. It begins in the living rooms, in the kitchens, at the dinner tables across America, where families now avoid talking about politics because the air gets too thick too fast. It begins in the silence between two friends who used to agree on everything but now can't even say the word Obama or Trump without flinching. It begins with the quiet realization that the country we share, the flag we salute, the dreams we hold dear no longer feel like things we all believe in together. Because this latest chapter hasn't just reopened political wounds, it has turned them into gaping, infected fractures. You can feel it, you can hear it. We are not simply divided, we are splintered. And the Obama arrest scandal, whether real or politically manufactured, has poured salt into that wound. You don't need a legal degree to feel the emotional collapse happening around this moment. All you need is a heart and a pair of open ears. Go on social media and you'll see it. Half the nation is posting celebratory GIFs, calling this the day justice finally arrived. They say no more immunity, no more elite protection. Obama is just another man, and he should face the law like the rest of us. And you know what? That sentiment comes from real pain. People who have felt overlooked, unheard, left behind, they believe truly that this is the system finally working for them. But then you scroll a little further and you see the grief. People with tears in their eyes sharing photos from people asking, how did we get here? People begging the world to remember the nights they stayed up with their kids to watch Obama give speeches about hope and healing. They see this moment not as justice, but as desecration, and it cuts deep. And in the middle of all this noise, all this shouting, are millions more who are just tired. They don't know who to believe anymore. They've seen the truth twisted so many times that even facts don't feel safe. They hear Tulsi Gabbard speak and wonder if she's a savior or a saboteur. They see Trump's involvement and wonder if justice is being served or manipulated. They don't cheer, they don't rage, they just ache. And let me tell you, that ache is real. It is the ache of a nation that's lost its reflection. We no longer recognize ourselves in one another. We see red and blue left and right, but we don't see hearts. We don't see mothers trying to make ends meet, veterans searching for peace, teachers praying for support, students drowning in fear. We see enemies, we see threats, and that is not how we survive. That is how we collapse. I've spoken to people in tears, people who voted for Obama and feel like they're watching their faith die in real time. I've spoken to people dancing in celebration, saying this is proof that even the powerful can't hide. And to all of them, I say the same thing. We must hold our sorrow and our celebration in truth, not in tribalism. Because justice is not supposed to be a football we toss between administration. It is not supposed to be a sword we draw to cut down our political opponents. It is supposed to be a mirror that forces all of us to confront uncomfortable truths, not just about our leaders, but about ourselves.
And right now that mirror is shattered. We have allowed this moment to become another brick in the wall that separates us. And the more we cheer for our side and curse theirs, the more we forget that we're all standing on the same fragile ground. If the justice system falls to political vengeance, it won't matter what party you belong to, we all lose, and if we allow ourselves to cheer at the possibility of someone being destroyed before the full truth is even told, then we are not acting out of courage, we are acting out of fear, and fear will always betray us in the end. This is bigger than Obama, bigger than Trump. This is about us. This is about our willingness to reach across this emotional canyon and say, I may not agree with you, but I still see your humanity. Because without that, this isn't a democracy, it's just a battleground. And now here we are standing right in the thick of it, a country broken wide open by questions of truth, vengeance, and legacy. Barack Obama accused Donald Trump, allegedly directing the pursuit. Tulsi Gabbard pulling back the curtain. Millions cheering, millions grieving. Millions more just stunned into silence. And through all the noise, all the arguments, all the headlines flying faster than the heart can process, one question keeps echoing louder and louder: who are we now? Because if we're honest, this moment isn't just about the past, it's about the future we're shaping with every decision we make right now. It's about what kind of country we want to be when the dust settles. And more than anything else, it's about the soul of America, what lives at our core when the flags are folded and the cameras are turned off. You see, it's easy to get caught up in the spectacle, easy to let rage lead the way, easy to believe that justice is whatever satisfies our... But that's not justice. That's tribalism wearing a costume, that's chaos pretending to be law. True justice is harder. It's quieter. It's patient. It requires proof, not passion. It asks us to wait, to listen, to examine, not to assume. And right now, this country is failing that. We've reached a point where facts don't stand a chance. Where people choose what they believe based not on evidence but on identity, where the name on the indictment matters more than the content inside it, and that is terrifying. Because if we lose our ability to discern the truth, if we decide we only trust the law when it punishes them and not us, then we are no longer living in a democracy, we are living in a power struggle with flags draped over it. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can still choose something different. We can still be the generation that said no, we won't let our justice system be hijacked by vendettas, we won't let our divisions destroy our decency. We will pause, we will ask questions, we will seek truth with compassion, not contempt. Because here's what I know for sure, history will not remember how loud we shouted, it will remember how deeply we listened, it will remember whether we chose to be brave enough to look our pain in the eye and say, I won't let you turn me cruel. It will remember whether we demanded the full truth, not just the part that comforted our side. And it will remember whether we let love, dignity, and fairness light the way even when the darkness felt easier. Maybe Obama is innocent, maybe Tulsi Gabbard is revealing something this country needs to hear, maybe she's a pawn in someone else's plan. Maybe Donald Trump is seeking justice. Maybe he's seeking revenge. All of these things can be investigated, challenged, proven, or disproven, but the way we respond, that's on us. Are we brave enough to hold the tension of uncertainty without turning to hatred? Are we humble enough to say, I don't know, but I want to find out the truth no matter where it leads? Are we willing to wait, to watch, to reflect, not just react? Because if we can do that, if we can meet this moment with clear eyes and open hearts, then we haven't lost the soul of this country. We've protected it. We've proven that it's still possible to walk through fire and come out with our humanity intact. I believe in that possibility. I've seen it too many times to give up on it now. I've seen people forgive the unforgivable. I've seen communities come together after tragedy. I've seen truth win, even when the odds were stacked against it. And I believe truly that we can be better than this moment, but it starts with us, right here, right now, in how we choose to respond. Not just to the headlines, but to each other. So before you hit share, before you post that angry comment, before you close your heart to someone who sees this differently, ask yourself, am I protecting truth, or just protecting my side? But maybe the most profound truth, the one we don't dare say aloud in polite conversation, is this: we are afraid of each other now. Yes, deeply afraid, and that fear is showing up in everything. It's showing up in our politics, in our policies, in our silence, and especially in our outrage, because beneath every tweet, every protest, every news cycle screaming traitor or hero, there's a people who no longer trust the ground beneath their feet. We are afraid that the person we once admired might not be who we thought they were. We are afraid that the system we believed in might be rigged beyond repair, and we are afraid more than anything that truth no longer matters. That we're living in a country where narrative has replaced evidence, where loyalty has replaced accountability, and where fear has replaced faith. And I get it, I really do. When your hope has been disappointed again and again, your heart builds walls. You become skeptical of you wonder if anything you believed was ever real. And when you see Barack Obama's name swirling in legal accusations and Donald Trump's name at the helm of that storm, it's not just political anymore, it becomes personal. Because somewhere along the way we stopped disagreeing with each other and started disowning each other. We stopped listening and started labeling traitor, criminal, dictator, fake American. Words that used to be reserved for enemies of the state are now tossed at neighbors, at coworkers, at family, and all of this moment, with Obama, Tulsi, Trump, and the media firestorm, it's just exposing what's already been bubbling under the surface. We're scared of who we've become. And here's the quiet truth: most people are too tired to say we don't know how to fix it. Because you can't fix a nation with more laws if its people are broken inside. You can't restore trust with indictments. You can't legislate your way back to unity. That kind of healing, the deep kind, starts with truth. Not political truth, human truth. The kind that says, I've been hurting too. The kind that says, maybe I judged too quickly. The kind that says, maybe I let my side become my This moment, the scandal, the confusion, the accusations, it's a mirror, and it's forcing all of us to look at what we've allowed ourselves to become. Are we still the country that fights for justice with integrity? Or are we the country that uses justice like a weapon handed from one angry leader to the next? Are we still the land of liberty? Or have we become the land of vengeance? I want to believe we still have time. I want to believe that even now we can step back from that we can say, before we imprison a man who once symbolized hope for millions, we will look at every fact, every file, every motive, that we will remember the difference between investigation and instigation. And I want to believe that we can stop letting powerful people play with our emotions like chess pieces, because that's what this is too, isn't it? Another game of control, another storm designed to distract us from our common ground. Because if we're fighting over which president is a criminal, we're not noticing the system's still broken, the children still hungry, the community's still divided. And maybe that's exactly the point, but we don't have to play that game. We don't have to be pawns in someone else's power struggle. We can rise above it, not by ignoring what's happening, but by demanding better facts, better transparency, better leaders, and most of all, better from ourselves. I know it's hard, I know we're tired, but we are not powerless. We can still choose how we respond. We can still demand justice without becoming vengeful. We can still hold people accountable without losing our compassion. We can still be the generation that turned this page, not with hate, but with courage. So take a breath, ask the hard questions, don't settle for easy answers. And when the next storm comes, and it will, you'll be standing on truth, not just shouting over the wind.